The first thing people noticed wasn't the siren. It was the sound of someone gasping for air. Right outside the emergency room doors, where lives were supposed to be saved, a black woman in navy scrubs staggered backward, her hands clawing at a uniformed officer's forearm locked tight around her throat. "Stop resisting," the cop shouted. But she wasn't fighting. She was choking. Patients froze on gurneys. A mother covered her child's eyes. A security guard hesitated, caught between training and fear. And the automatic ER doors slid open and shut behind them, indifferent, hissing like they didn't care what was happening on the concrete just inches away. Her name was Avery Collins. 34. Your nurse. 12-hour shift. Still wearing blood-specked gloves tucked into her pocket. And in that moment, pinned against the hospital wall with a stranger's arm crushing her windpipe, she couldn't breathe long enough to explain anything. 5 minutes earlier, Avery had stepped outside the ER to answer a call she'd been putting off all night. Her phone vibrated again and again in her scrub pocket while she stitched wounds, adjusted IVs, whispered comfort to families who wouldn't see morning. She ignored it until the charge nurse finally nudged her. "You good?" "Yeah," Avery said automatically. "Just one call." She pushed through the sliding doors into the cold night air, exhaustion pulling at her bones. Her shoulders sagged the second she stepped outside. Her hands were still shaking from the code blue she'd just worked. "Hey," she said into the phone, voice low. "I'm outside. What's wrong?" She didn't hear the cruiser roll up behind her. Didn't see the headlights sweep across the ambulance bay. All she heard was her sister's voice cracking through the speaker. "Avery, Mom's not answering. I've been calling for an hour." Her chest tightened. "I'll call her," Avery said, already turning back toward the doors. "I'll check." That's when the officer yelled. "Hey!" Avery turned, confused, phone still pressed to her ear. "Yes," she said. The officer was already out of his cruiser. Mid-30s. Broad shoulders. Hand resting casually near his belt like it belonged there. His eyes flicked from her scrubs to her phone to the ID badge clipped at her waist, and somehow landed on suspicion instead of recognition. "You can't be loitering here," he said. Avery blinked. "I'm not, I work here." She gestured to the yard doors behind her. The badge. The scrubs. The ambulance pulling in with lights still flashing. The officer didn't even glance back. "I got a call," he said. "Woman matching your description causing a disturbance." Avery frowned. "A disturbance? I'm on the phone." "Put it down." "Sir, I'm an ER nurse. I just stepped out for..." I said put the phone down. Her sister's voice crackled through the speaker. "Avery? What's happening?" Avery lowered the phone slightly. "I'm being stopped by an officer. I'll call you back." She took one step toward the doors. That's when the officer grabbed her arm. Not hard at first. Just enough to stop her. "Don't touch me," Avery said instinctively, panic flickering behind her eyes. "I didn't do anything." He tightened his grip. "Ma'am, you're not listening." "I am listening," she said, voice rising. "I'm telling you I work here. I'm late getting back inside." She pulled her arm free. And that's when everything escalated. The officer's posture changed. His jaw clenched. His voice sharpened. "Stop resisting." "I'm not resisting," Avery said. "I need to go back inside. There are patients." The next second blurred into shock. Suddenly his arm came around her neck. Her back hit the wall. The phone slipped from her hand and clattered across the concrete, her sister's voice spilling out in panic. "Avery? Avery?" Avery's vision tunneled. She clawed at his sleeve, fingers slipping against thick fabric. Her feet scraped uselessly against the ground as she tried to pull air into lungs that refused to cooperate. "I have to breathe," she gasped. "Stop resisting," he shouted again, louder this time, as if volume could make the lie true. Someone screamed. Someone else yelled, "Hey! That's a nurse!" The officer didn't let go. Avery's face burned. Black spots bloomed at the edges of her vision. Her hands fluttered weakly now, strength draining fast. And through the haze, she saw the yard doors burst open. Doctors, nurses, security. Her colleagues. She tried to call out, tried to call for help, Tried to say I work here. Nothing came out but a thin, broken sound. Security finally rushed in. Sir, let go of her. The officer hesitated, just long enough for Avery's knees to buckle. She slid down the wall, coughing violently as the pressure eased, sucking in air like it might disappear again. Hands were suddenly everywhere, supporting her, checking her pulse, guiding her to a bench. "Get a doctor," someone shouted. Avery's chest heaved. Tears streamed down her face, half pain, half humiliation. The officer stepped back, breathing hard, eyes darting around as the crowd closed in. "She was resisting," he said quickly. "I followed procedure." Avery looked up at him, disbelief burning through the shock. "I told you," she rasped. "I work here." The officer scoffed. "That's what they all say." That's when a voice cut through the chaos, low, controlled, and furious in a way that made the air feel heavier. "What happened here?" Everyone turned. A man in a tailored coat stood just inside the doors, flanked by hospital administrators who suddenly looked very, very nervous. His eyes locked on Avery, on the red marks blooming around her neck, on the way she was shaking, on the blood-specked scrubs. The color drained from his face. He crossed the distance in 3 strides and dropped to his knees in front of her. "Avery," he said, voice breaking despite his effort to control it. "Look at me. Are you okay?" Her vision cleared just enough to recognize him. Her husband, Dr. Marcus Collins, hospital director. She reached for him with trembling fingers. He wouldn't listen," she whispered. The officer stiffened. "Sir," he said, straightening. "I need you to step back." Marcus stood slowly, very slowly. He turned toward the officer, eyes cold now, voice dangerously calm. "You just put your hands on my wife," he said. "Outside my emergency room." The officer laughed once, sharp and dismissive. "Sir, I don't know who you think you are." Marcus didn't raise his voice. Didn't shout. He simply said the words that made the entire scene freeze. "I'm the hospital director." Silence slammed down like a dropped tray. And as the officer's face began to change, confusion cracking into something closer to fear, Marcus added quietly, "And you just made the worst mistake of your career." The officer didn't move his arm right away. For half a second, maybe less, his grip stayed exactly where it was, tight against Avery's throat, like his body hadn't yet accepted what his ears had heard. "My husband is the hospital director." Those words didn't land softly. They landed like a crack in glass. Around them, the air shifted. The sharp, breath-held silence that follows something violent but unfinished. Nurses froze mid-step. A paramedic lowered his stretcher. A security guard's hand hovered near his radio, unsure whether to speak or wait. Avery's vision pulsed at the edges. Her fingers clawed weakly at the officer's forearm. Not in resistance, not in attack, but in the primal, humiliating instinct to breathe. Her lungs burned. Every heartbeat thudded loud in her ears. Marcus stepped forward, with a calm yet deliberate tone that felt dangerous. "Take your arm off her neck," he said. This time, it wasn't a request. The officer swallowed. Slowly, too slowly, his arm dropped away. Avery staggered, the sudden release making her dizzy. Her knees buckled as air rushed back into her chest in sharp, painful gasps. She coughed once, twice, her hand flying to her throat, already tender, already swelling. Marcus caught her before she hit the ground. The world tilted as she clutched his coat, her entire body shaking now that the adrenaline had nowhere else to go. She could hear voices, too many, layered and echoing, but none of them made sense yet. "You're okay," Marcus murmured, low and steady near her ear. "I've got you. Breathe with me." She tried. Every breath felt like swallowing glass. Behind them, the officer straightened, his face rearranging itself into something defensive, practiced, rigid. "She matched the description," he said quickly, too quickly. I approached her. She became uncooperative. Avery's head snapped up. Uncooperative? Her lips parted, but nothing came out. Her voice was gone, scraped raw by panic and pressure. "She was on the phone," someone said from the crowd. "I saw the whole thing," another voice added. She never touched him. Marcus didn't look at the witnesses yet. His eyes stayed on the officer. "You're saying my wife resisted you?" he said evenly. "Yes, sir." The words slipped out automatically now, respect surfacing only after fear had already done its damage. Marcus nodded once, slowly. "Badge number," he said. The officer hesitated. The pause was small, but it was there. Marcus noticed. "Badge number," he repeated, quieter this time. The officer recited it. Marcus didn't write it down. Didn't pull out a phone. He didn't need to. Because above them, mounted to the concrete beams, the security cameras blinked red, unblinking, impartial, already recording a version of events that no one here could rewrite. Avery followed Marcus's gaze upward and felt something inside her chest tighten. Not fear this time, but realization. This is being seen. Her humiliation, her terror, her vulnerability, captured from angles she hadn't consented to. Phones were coming out now. She saw them rise, one by one, held at chest level, then higher. She felt exposed in a way Scrubs had never made her feel before. Not just as a woman. Not just as a black woman. But as someone who had spent her life caring for others, now reduced to a headline in progress. Marcus shifted, subtly placing his body between her and the cameras, his hand firm on her back. "Get a screen," he said quietly. Two nurses moved immediately, snapping open a portable privacy barrier with efficient urgency, shielding Avery from the growing crowd. The officer watched it happen, his jaw tightening. "This doesn't need to turn into a scene," he said. A nurse laughed bitterly. "You already made it one." Avery swallowed, the motion painful. "I told you," she rasped, finally finding her voice. "I told you I worked here. I told you who I was." Her voice cracked, not loud, not dramatic, but fragile in a way that made several people look away. The officer's eyes flicked to her Scrubs now, really seeing them for the first time. The ID badge still clipped to her chest. The hospital logo. Her name. A flicker of something crossed his face. "Everybody's got a story," he muttered, as if clinging to the same script might still save him. Marcus turned fully toward him. "This isn't a story," he said. "This is documented." Before the officer could respond, a woman stepped forward from the ER doors. Mid-40s. Tailored blazer. Tablet in hand. Her expression was calm, but her eyes were sharp enough to cut. "Hospital compliance," she said, her voice carrying easily. "I've already reviewed 2 camera angles." The officer stiffened. "There was no resistance," she continued. "No threat. No justification for a chokehold." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Avery closed her eyes, relief washing over her in a wave so sudden it almost made her dizzy again. The compliance officer turned to the cop. "I need you to remain on site," she said. "Internal Affairs has been notified." The officer scoffed, but it came out hollow. "This is being blown out of proportion." The compliance officer didn't blink. "Is it?" Sirens echoed faintly in the distance. Police sirens. Not ambulances. Avery's stomach dropped. Marcus felt her tense instantly. "You're not in trouble," he whispered. "Not you." But fear doesn't listen to logic, not when your body still remembers not being able to breathe. A sergeant arrived moments later, older, seasoned, eyes scanning the scene with practiced efficiency. "What happened?" he asked. Marcus said nothing at first. Instead, he gently lifted Avery's chin, just enough to reveal the darkening marks already blooming along her neck. The sergeant's face changed. "Whose call?" he asked quietly. The officer swallowed. "Mine." The sergeant looked at him for a long moment, then nodded once. "We'll need statements." "You'll have them," Marcus said. "Along with footage, witnesses, and medical reports." A nurse touched Avery's arm softly. "We need to examine you, okay?" Avery nodded, exhausted beyond words. As they eased her onto a wheelchair and began to roll her inside, past colleagues who looked at her with shock, anger, and fierce solidarity, Avery glanced back one last time. The officer stood alone now. No authority in his posture. No confidence in his eyes. Just uncertainty. Inside the ER, as the doors slid shut behind her, Avery felt the weight of what almost happened pressed down on her chest. If Marcus hadn't arrived when he did, if there hadn't been cameras, if no one had spoken up, her breath hitched. Marcus squeezed her hand. "I'm here," he said. But even as Avery was wheeled toward a trauma bay, Marcus was already pulling out his phone. Not to call a lawyer. Not yet. He was calling the board. And someone else. Someone who didn't care about excuses. Someone who asked one question and expected the truth. The first thing Avery noticed when she woke up was the quiet. Not the peaceful kind. The heavy kind. The kind that sits in a hospital room after something has gone wrong and everyone is waiting to see how wrong it really is. Her throat ached with a dull, persistent soreness that reminded her of every second she'd spent fighting for air outside the... A faint burning sensation pulsed under the skin of her neck, tender to the touch, already bruising in deep shades of purple and blue that no amount of makeup would hide later. She swallowed slowly. It hurt. A nurse noticed her stirring and stepped closer, her face soft but careful, like she didn't want to startle Avery back into panic. "CT scan was clear," the nurse said gently. "No internal damage. But you've got significant soft tissue bruising. We're documenting everything." Documenting? The word landed heavier than reassurance. Avery nodded, her eyes drifting to the door, half expecting it to burst open again with raised voices, uniforms, accusations. Her body hadn't yet learned that she was safe. Marcus sat beside the bed, jacket folded neatly over the chair, his posture rigid but controlled, like he was holding himself together through sheer discipline. His eyes were tired, more tired than she'd ever seen them, but sharp, focused, burning with something he hadn't allowed to surface yet. "You okay?" he asked quietly. She tried to answer, but her voice came out thin, strained, unfamiliar. "I couldn't breathe," she said. "I kept thinking, if I pass out right here, no one will stop him. Not until it's too late." Marcus's jaw tightened. He reached for her hand, lacing his fingers through hers like an anchor. "You're here," he said. "You're safe. And what happened to you is not going to disappear." Before Avery could respond, the door opened again. This time, it wasn't medical staff. 2 men and 1 woman stepped inside, all dressed in plain clothes, all carrying the same quiet authority that didn't need to announce itself. One of them held a tablet. Another carried a slim folder. The third closed the door carefully behind them. "Mrs. Walker," the woman said. "I'm Special Agent Dana Morales. This is federal oversight." Marcus stood immediately. "We were told the body cam footage was flagged," he said. Morales nodded. "It was done automatically and manually." She turned the tablet toward them. On the screen was a frozen image, grainy, wide-angled, unmistakable. Avery's back was against the concrete column. The officer's arm locked around her throat. Her mouth opened. Her eyes wide. The image alone made her stomach twist. "We've reviewed the footage," Morales continued. "Multiple times. From multiple angles." She paused, letting the weight of that sink in. There was no threat. No resistance. No justification. Avery's breath shook. Morales scrolled. The video played. The sound of Avery's voice, panicked, strained, desperate, filled the room. "I work here, please, my badge." Then the officer's voice, sharp and dismissive. "Stop resisting." Avery turned her face away, tears burning behind her eyes. Hearing herself like that, reduced to pleading, felt like being violated all over again. Marcus reached out and stopped the video. "That's enough," he said quietly. Morales nodded. "Understood." She locked the tablet and met Avery's eyes. "The officer has been placed on immediate administrative leave," she said. "Pending investigation." Administrative leave. A phrase that sounded far too gentle for what had happened. Avery exhaled slowly. "And?" she asked. Morales didn't sugarcoat it. "There will be consequences. But they won't be instant." Of course they won't, Avery thought. They never are. Morales continued, "What will be instant is the public response." She hesitated before adding, "The footage was leaked." Marcus stiffened. "Leaked how?" Morales's mouth tightened. "Someone recorded the security monitors with a phone. It's already online." Avery's heart dropped. Millions of views, Morales said softly. And climbing. The room felt smaller suddenly. Avery imagined strangers watching her worst moment. Pausing it. Replaying it. Debating it. Commenting on it like it was entertainment. She didn't comply. He followed protocol. Why was she arguing? Her chest tightened again, not from pressure this time, but from dread. I didn't want this, Avery whispered. I didn't want to be a video. Marcus knelt beside her bed, his voice low and steady. You didn't choose this, he said. But you're not alone in it. As if summoned by the words, the sound of raised voices drifted faintly through the hallway outside. Marcus stood and opened the door just enough to see. Doctors, nurses, EMTs, orderlies. Staff from every department had gathered, their scrubs a patchwork of colors, their expressions a mix of rage, heartbreak, and fierce protectiveness. Someone held up a phone. Another held a sign already hastily written. Healers deserve safety too. Avery stared. They were here. For her. A senior ER nurse stepped forward, eyes blazing. We've been asking for this accountability for years, she said. This time, there's no excuse. A chant began to ripple through the crowd, quiet at first, then stronger. Say her name. Say her name. Avery felt tears spill freely now, unashamed. Not because she was broken, but because she was seen. Across town, inside the precinct, the mood was very different. The officer sat alone in an interrogation room, his badge on the table, his hands clasped tight enough to turn white. Across from him, Internal Affairs played the footage again. Slower this time, frame by frame. Explain this moment, an investigator said, pausing the video where Avery's feet clearly left the ground. The officer's mouth opened. I felt threatened, he said finally. The investigator leaned back, unimpressed. By a nurse in scrubs. On the phone. Outside her workplace. The investigator slid another file across the table. Also, he added, this isn't your first complaint. The officer's head snapped up. Inside Avery's room, Morales returned, her expression heavier now. There's something else, she said. The hospital board has been notified. Media requests are pouring in. And the police union has issued a statement. Marcus already knew what that meant. Avery saw it in his face. They're defending him, she said quietly. Morales didn't deny it. They're saying the footage doesn't show the full context. Avery laughed weakly, a sound halfway to a sob. What context makes that okay? Morales met her gaze. That's what comes next. That night, as Avery lay awake listening to the distant hum of hospital life, her phone buzzed non-stop on the bedside table. Messages from colleagues. From strangers. From people thanking her for surviving. And others blamed her for almost not. Marcus sat beside her, scrolling through updates, his expression darkening with every new headline. Tomorrow, he said slowly, this goes from investigation to battle. Avery turned toward him, her voice steady despite the fear still lodged deep in her chest. Then I'm not hiding, she said. I won't be quiet. Not this time. Marcus nodded. Outside, beyond the hospital walls, the story was growing, mutating, being pulled into courtrooms, union halls, news studios, and living rooms across the country. And somewhere between outrage and denial, the officer's attorney filed a motion that changed everything. A motion to dismiss the case entirely. The news broke just before dawn. Avery was sitting upright in her hospital bed, neck wrapped in a soft brace, watching the early morning news flicker silently on the mounted television when Marcus's phone vibrated sharply in his hand. He didn't answer it right away. Something in his face changed first. His shoulders stiffened. His jaw tightened. His eyes darkened in a way Avery had learned to recognize over years of marriage. The look he wore when the weight of responsibility collided with moral outrage. What is it? Avery asked quietly. Marcus exhaled slowly, as if choosing his words carefully so they wouldn't wound her more than necessary. They're moving to reinstate him, he said. Effective immediately. Desk duty but still active. Before the investigation concludes. For a moment, Avery didn't respond. Not because she didn't understand, but because a familiar heaviness settled in her chest, The same one she'd felt her entire life watching stories like hers unfold on screens instead of hospital monitors. So this is how it happens, she thought. Not with loud declarations of innocence, but with quiet decisions made behind closed doors. They're betting this will fade, Avery said finally. That people will get tired. That outrage has an expiration date. Marcus nodded. The union's pushing hard. They're calling it a procedural overreaction. Avery let out a soft, humorless laugh. Funny, she said, because my airway didn't feel procedural. The hospital room door opened again, this time without knocking. Dana Morales stepped inside, her face tight, professional composure barely masking frustration. There's a press conference scheduled for noon, she said. The department plans to announce the reinstatement. They're framing it as due process. Avery met her gaze. And me, she asked. Where do I fit into their due process? Morales hesitated. You're the variable they didn't account for. Downstairs, outside the hospital, the crowd had doubled overnight. Word had spread. Healthcare workers stood shoulder to shoulder with community organizers, civil rights advocates, and ordinary people who'd simply watched the footage and recognized something painfully familiar. A woman held a sign that read, "She saves lives." Who saved hers? Another, "Accountability is not optional." Avery stood at the window, watching them gather, her reflection faintly visible in the glass. Bruises visible, posture still fragile, but eyes clearer than they'd been since the night everything changed. I can't let them tell this story without me, she said. Marcus turned toward her, concern written across his face. You don't owe anyone anything, he said. You've already been through enough. Avery reached for his hand. I owe it to myself, she replied, and to everyone who didn't have a camera, or a platform, or someone in their corner. By noon, every major news outlet was live. Cameras lined the steps outside the hospital as the police department spokesperson began reading from a prepared statement, voice smooth, rehearsed, distant. After careful review, the department has determined that reinstatement pending investigation is appropriate under current guidelines. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Then the spokesperson paused. An aide leaned in, whispering urgently. The spokesperson's expression faltered. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, clearing his throat. We have been informed that there will be an additional statement. The doors behind him opened. Avery stepped forward. The crowd went silent. She wasn't wearing scrubs this time. She wore a simple coat over a soft blouse, neck still visibly bruised, chin held high not because she wasn't afraid, but because she refused to shrink. Marcus stood just behind her. Dana Morales stood to the side. Avery took a breath. When I walked into work that night, she began, her voice steady but layered with emotion, I was doing what I've done for 12 years, showing up to take care of people on their worst days. She paused, eyes scanning the crowd. I was not a threat. I was not resisting. I was not a suspect. Her voice tightened slightly. I was a nurse. And I was treated like my life was disposable. The cameras zoomed in. This isn't about one officer, Avery continued. It's about a system that protects power before it protects people. A system that asks victims to be patient while their pain is debated. She touched her neck gently. I survived. But survival is not justice. Behind the scenes, something shifted. Inside the department, federal oversight moved faster than the union expected. The prior complaints against the officer, once buried, were now public. A pattern emerged. Use of force, dismissed concerns, silenced victims. By mid-afternoon, the announcement came. The officer's reinstatement was rescinded. Charges were filed, not only for excessive force, but for falsifying reports. The police chief resigned before sunset. The crowd erupted, not in celebration, but in something heavier. Relief, validation. Avery sat quietly later that night, back in her hospital room, watching the news one last time before turning the TV off. Marcus sat beside her, silent. Do you feel better? He asked gently. Avery thought for a long moment. I feel clearer, she said. I used to believe these stories were rare. She shook her head slowly. They're not. They're warnings. She looked at him. And if telling mine helps even one person feel less alone, or one system rethink its power, then it mattered. The next morning, Avery was discharged. As she walked out of the hospital, past colleagues, past supporters, past strangers who nodded in quiet solidarity, she didn't feel like a symbol. She felt like a survivor. But she also knew this wasn't the end. Because justice, she had learned, isn't a moment. It's a responsibility. And it belongs to all of us. Stories like Avery's don't end when the cameras shut off, because there are countless others who never get seen. If this story moved you, like this video so it reaches more people. Subscribe for more cinematic stories that shine light where silence once lived. And tell us in the comments, should officers face automatic suspension after incidents like this? Have you or someone you love experienced something similar? What does justice look like to you? Punishment, reform, or something deeper? Your voice matters. And sometimes, it's the only thing powerful enough to change the ending.